The Thousand Sunny lay broken at dusk, its lion figurehead cracked, mast snapped, sails hanging like torn memories over a dead sea. Luffy stood alone on the figurehead, staring at the horizon that once meant freedom. Marineford had taken Ace. Sabaody had scattered his friends. But this time, there was no vow to get stronger together. This time, the captain decided the Straw Hats would end here. But what if the greatest act of leadership Luffy ever showed was not charging into war, but letting go of his own crew before the world could rip them away again? What if the Straw Hat Pirates vanished, not because an admiral crushed them, but because their captain disbanded them first? How would the seas react if the most dangerous rookie crew simply dissolved overnight? Canon already showed the cracks in Luffy's dream. At Sabaody, a single admiral and a pacifista squad turned the supernova playground into a slaughterhouse. Kuma's paws erased the Straw Hats in an instant, and leaving Luffy screaming on Amazon Lily, helpless and broken. That helplessness led straight into Marineford, where his lack of haki, training, and control over his devil fruit meant that saving Ace was always one step out of reach. Ace died in his arms. The war ended in failure, and Luffy's heart had become an absolute mess. In the real timeline, that pain pushed him toward training, toward Rayleigh, toward 2 years of grinding to become a force to be reckoned with. But imagine a version of Luffy who looks at Sabaody, at Marineford, at every crewmate's bloodied face, and draws a different conclusion. Not be stronger for them. They are in danger because of me. In that moment on the shattered Sunny, disbanding the crew becomes a twisted act of protection. No more ships sunk because they sail under his flag. No more Marines targeting Nami, Usopp, or Chopper just to break his will. No more Yonko treating the Thousand Sunny like bait. Ending the Straw Hats means ending the single target painted on everyone he loves. That choice would explode across the world. Zoro walking his own path as Mihawk's true rival, no captain to hold him back. Sanji pulled between Zeph and Germa, cooking for kings while fighting in wars under other banners. Nami turning her navigation genius into a business empire or a government weapon. A scattered legacy, each name on a different wanted poster. See each island whispering that the former Straw Hats were still out there, just no longer together. Soon enough, the Marines would realize the nightmare. One broken crew replaced by multiple independent monsters. Any future Marineford-style war would no longer mean one ship arriving late to the fight. It would mean ex-Straw Hats descending from every horizon, with their own crews, their own alliances, their own agendas. To understand how dangerous that world becomes, the story first has to return to the original timeline, then trace the exact moment Luffy breaks, then follow each member's solo rise, and finally rebuild a new Marineford, where the Straw Hats reunite not as Nakama, but as rival powers. From East Blue to war, how the Canon Straw Hats were forged. To see how radical that reunion is, the story has to remember what was almost lost: the original Straw Hats, forged step by step from East Blue to war. It began with a boy in a barrel leaving Fuchsia Village, chasing a promise made to red-haired Shanks. Luffy's first real move was Shellstown, cutting down execution posts and Marines to free a starving swordsman named Zoro. Soon enough, Nami crossed their path in Orangetown, a thief chasing maps and money, not dreams of the Pirate King. Syrup Village added Usopp, a liar with a sniper's aim, and Bharati brought Sanji, a chef who would rather break his legs than break his oath to Zeph. As by the time Arlong Park fell and Nami finally asked for help, the Straw Hats had become an absolute mess in the best way. A patched-together family sailing out of East Blue toward the Grand Line, loaded with promises and barely any plan. Reverse Mountain turned that chaos into direction. Laboon slammed his head against the Red Line, and the crew answered with a promise to return, not as weaklings but as a force to be reckoned with. The Whiskey Peak and Baroque works revealed the first shadows of the world government's secret hands. Protecting Vivi pulled them into a hidden war, and Drum Island added Chopper, a terrified doctor who learned that monsters could be heroes if they had a captain willing to bet everything. Alabasta was the first real test. Taking down Crocodile meant standing against a warlord and the clandestine power behind him. That fight led to something crucial: shared danger, shared blood, shared victory. Zar trust hardened there. The Straw Hats were no longer just passengers on Luffy's wild journey. They were co-conspirators against an entire system. After that, the sky itself was not off limits. Scapaia showed how the crew would challenge a self-proclaimed god, while the gold they earned barely mattered compared to the bonds that survived the fall back to the sea. But Water 7 and Enies Lobby pushed everything to the edge. The Going Merry's funeral proved their ship had been family too. And Usopp's split, duel with Luffy, and tearful return showed that this crew could fracture without breaking. Robin's "I want to live" and Luffy burning the world government's flag turned a rescue into open war. That single act meant the Straw Hats were now enemies of the entire world, all for the sake of one archaeologist who had finally chosen to live. Thriller Bark confirmed how far that loyalty went. Every Straw Hat collapsing to take Luffy's pain, and Zoro standing alone in a silent sea of blood, meant that death for their captain was simply not acceptable. Then Sabaody took that certainty and shattered it. Supernovas, Celestial Dragons, Pacifistas, Kizaru, Kuma. One punch to a Celestial Dragon meant an Admiral, a Buster Call level response, and finally, the crew being erased in an instant. Cannon turned that loss into fuel. The forced separation led to training, hockey, and a stronger, a more unified crew that would later shake Marineford and the New World. Every break so far had made them stronger as a unit. But what if that pattern ended? How would the story change if instead of the world tearing them apart, Luffy chose to disband the Straw Hats himself? Before the next war could claim them? Sabaody? Marineford? One and the breaking point of a captain. So if every forced separation had made the Straw Hats stronger as a unit, what happens when the next break almost kills that unit entirely? Sabaody Archipelago answers that question with brutal clarity. By the time the crew reached Sabaody, the Straw Hats walked like legends in the making. Fresh off Enies Lobby, new bounties on their heads, standing among the 11 supernovas, they looked like a force to be reckoned with. And then Luffy punched a Celestial Dragon, and that one decision meant that an Admiral, Pacifistas, and the full weight of the world government would come crashing down on them. After that punch, the Marines quickly moved in, and Kizaru soon arrived to take care of the mess. Light-speed kicks shattered confidence as easily as bones. Sentomaru's arrival, the Pacifistas' laser barrages, Kuma's silent advance, the battlefield had become an absolute mess. One by one, each Straw Hat vanished under Kuma's paw, warped away while Luffy clawed at the ground, screaming, unable to protect a single friend. For the first time, the captain who laughed in the face of war couldn't even land a meaningful hit. That helplessness carried straight into Luffy's solo spiral. He crashed onto Amazon Lily, broken and bandaged, only to learn Ace was scheduled for execution at Marineford. No crew, no plan, only panic. With Hancock's help, Luffy infiltrated Impel Down, and forcing a path through the world's most feared prison with nothing but sheer will, an overtaxed devil fruit body, and a patchwork alliance of Crocodile, Jinbei, Ivankov, and death row monsters. Every level descended meant more poison, more exhaustion, more mental strain. So when Luffy burst into Marineford, he was already spent, and the war waiting for him was beyond anything the Straw Hats had ever faced. Whitebeard's arrival split the sea itself. 3 admirals sat on their thrones of ice and magma and light. Warlords lined the execution platform. Giants, Pacifistas, vice admirals all converged in a single hellscape. Luffy still charged anyway, weaving through cannon fire, clashing with Mihawk, dodging Kizaru, forcing his way toward Ace. For a moment, hope won. The key shattered, the shackles fell, and Ace fought at his brother's side. Then Akainu's magma fist punched through that hope, killing Ace in Luffy's arms. Not before Whitebeard himself fell to Blackbeard's betrayal. 2 father figures gone in one day, both in front of the same helpless captain. Post-war, Luffy finally broke. On Amazon Lily's shore, he screamed that he had nothing left. Jinbei reminded him of the Straw Hats. Rayleigh arrived with a path forward. Canon Luffy chose training, Haki, 2 years to become stronger and reunite. But what if the same logic twisted darker? If his weakness drew admirals, if his flag turned every fight into a war, and then maybe his very dream invited tragedy onto his friends. How would the story change if that realization led to one conclusion? The Straw Hats had to be disbanded to survive. If Luffy believes his dream is killing the people he loves, is it more in character to cling to them at any cost, or to let them go, scattering legends across the sea before the next Marineford arrives for them all? A world scattered, canon separation, and the seeds of disbandment. In that light, the canon separation suddenly looks less like a tragedy and more like a rehearsal. The Straw Hats had already vanished once. The world just did not realize how close that came to being permanent. Kuma's palms fired, and the crew's unity shattered into a montage of exile. Luffy, the captain who charged into Marineford, was first. Launched to Amazon Lily, an island of warriors where men were killed on sight, and Haki was as natural as breathing. Zoro crashed onto Karaigana Island, now bleeding out in a wasteland of ruins, only to wake under the gaze of Dracul Mihawk, the very mountain he intended to climb. Nami fell from the sky into Witheria, a floating island of weather scientists surrounded by experimental climate technology instead of a pirate crew. Usopp landed on the Boyne archipelago, where the jungle itself wanted to eat him. Plants hunted, traps closed, and the sniper who always hid behind stronger allies had to fight just to not be swallowed. And Sanji was hurled into Kamabaka Kingdom, trapped on an island of aggressive Okama martial artists whose training was terrifying but effective. Chopper dropped into the Torino Kingdom, between giant birds and oppressed villagers, forced to become a doctor and warrior without Luffy's orders. Robin woke in chains at Tequila Wolf, a world government bridge built on slave labor, where her past as Ohara's survivor put her one step from execution. Frankie staggered into Karakuri Island. Surrounded by Vegapunk's abandoned weapons and blueprints, technology with enough power to reshape entire wars. Brook washed ashore on Namakura Island, a starving, gloomy land where his devil fruit and music made him a wandering soul idol, half comedian, half grim reaper. No Vivre cards, no Den Den Mushi, no idea if anyone else was even alive. Each island was hostile, strange, or both, and every Straw Hat had to survive without the captain's smile or the ship's familiar chaos. And the Thousand Sunny was empty. And in practice, the Straw Hats had become an absolute mess. 9 individual legends in the making, cut off from their center. But what if that accidental dispersal was not just a setback, but a glimpse at 9 different futures? Zoro, a lone swordsman honed daily by Mihawk. Nami, a weather witch among scientists. Usopp, a guerrilla fighter raised by monstrous flora. Robin, pulled deeper into the Revolutionary Army's shadow war. Frankie, armed with Vegapunk-level firepower. Brook, a roaming icon with his own following. Each path was already a force to be reckoned with, even before Marineford. Meanwhile, Luffy fought through Impel Down, and Marineford believing his crew was only temporarily lost. Yet functionally, they were already disbanded. The only difference between canon and this timeline is whether he ever calls them back. How would the story change if when Ace is saved and the war finally ends, Luffy looks at that scattered reality and decides not to fix it? In canon, the message on his arm turns from SOS into a silent order. 2 years of training, then reunite. In this world, that same moment becomes a crossroads. The ink on Luffy's skin is no longer a promise to meet again, but the stage for a decision that could freeze the Straw Hats as separate legends forever. And that is where the real divergence begins. And the moment everything changes, Luffy's decision to disband. That crossroads doesn't stay theoretical for long. It slams into reality on Amazon Lily, in the quiet moments after the war, when the cheering has faded and only the echoes of Marineford remain. Luffy wakes from another nightmare of Ace's death. But this time, the memory won't stay in Marineford. It drags him backward. Arlong's blade at Nami's throat. Usopp's body broken at Eni's lobby. Zoro bleeding out under Kuma's paw at Thriller Bark. The Straw Hats scattered like insects at Sabaody. Each scene has the same center: his flag, his smile, his recklessness. In canon, that guilt pushes him to become stronger. But what if Ace's last moments twist that guilt into something else? In this world, the thought that will not leave his head is simple and cruel. Every person who stands beside him becomes a target in his private war against the world government. And Rayleigh arrives on Amazon Lily as before, ready to offer training, hockey, and the promise of a comeback. The Dark King explains how 2 years of training will let Luffy protect everyone next time. How would the story change if Luffy listens, then asks a different question? What if strength alone is not the answer? If the Marines hunt the Straw Hats because they are a crew, then removing the crew means removing the target. On the shore, with Jinbei watching in silence, Luffy voices it, and no shouting, no jokes, just a hoarse whisper that hits harder than any Gear 3 punch. The Straw Hat Pirates end here. His presence, his devil fruit, his name had become an absolute mess for everyone who believed in him. Disbanding becomes, in his mind, the only way to protect those dreams he promised never to crush. Rayleigh pushes back. He calls Luffy a force to be reckoned with, says that a captain does not abandon his crew. Jinbei reminds him that the Straw Hats chose this fight. But Luffy has already decided what leadership means after Marineford. If the next war is against emperors and the world government, then dragging cooks, navigators, and snipers into that fire feels like a crime. Soon enough, the moment for the public message arrives. Luffy still returns to Marineford's ruins with Rayleigh and Jinbei, still makes the world look his way. But the tattoo is different. No 3D2Y. Instead, a simple mark the crew agreed on back at Sabaody as a joke. There's a backup signal, a small crossed-out Jolly Roger beside his own. Back then, it meant split up and survive. Now it means something harsher. Live your own dream, do not come back to him. The Marines see a mad pirate screaming into the sea. The Straw Hats see an order. The rule of the world quietly changes that day. Officially, the Straw Hat Pirates are over. Their bounties remain. Their legends grow. But there is no single ship to sink anymore. Only 9 separate storms brewing across the Grand Line, each about to evolve in a different, dangerous direction. 9 roads, no captain, where each Straw Hat goes alone. From that single shout, 9 roads open at once. The Straw Hat flag stops moving as one current and splinters into separate tides that the world cannot easily track. Zoro's path is the quietest and the most dangerous. Zakraigana Island had already been a graveyard of ambitions. But under Mihawk's gaze, it becomes a forge. Without Luffy to come back to, Zoro does not train as a first mate preparing to rejoin a captain. He kneels as a formal disciple, accepting the title of student to the world's strongest swordsman and a future rival in the same breath. After that, the training turns brutal. Sword styles are broken and rebuilt. Haki is hammered into every swing. And soon enough, Mihawk starts sending Zoro back to sea between lessons. Not as a pirate, but as a roaming pirate hunter, cutting down New World crews, claiming bounties, and letting the name Roronoa Zoro spread like a quiet warning before the fight even starts. Nami's answer is the opposite of wandering. She anchors herself in knowledge. Weatheria had become an absolute mess of failed experiments and runaway clouds when she arrived, but Nami bends that chaos into a classroom. She masters weather science, tears apart the sky with new climate-act concepts, then looks at the Grand Line and realizes one island is not enough. But what if the world's most dangerous weather routes were locked behind Yonko territories and underworld charts? That question pulls her into global navigation networks, into whispered meetings with information brokers and smugglers. How would the Marines react when rumors start spreading that a single navigator can route ships through seas even Buster Calls avoid? Some emperors might try to recruit her. A Yonko intel arm might quietly become her client, just to keep that map out of rival hands. Sanji walks a line between blood and loyalty. Kamabaka leaves him stronger, faster, with haki sharpened by humiliation and training. But the All-Blue still calls. Lacking a Straw Hat galley to return to, his trail bends back toward two anchors, the Bharati and Germa 66. Zeph's name opens doors in the honest seas, while Germa's science opens doors in the shadows. Sanji weaponizes both. He becomes a roaming chef warrior, sailing from floating restaurants to war-torn islands, feeding starving towns one day and kicking through underworld brokers the next. When Germa's technology is used to poison a region's food supply, Sanji is the one who burns the lab, fights off marine cleanup squads, and leaves only shattered raid suits and a smoking kitchen behind. Usopp, meanwhile, steps into the legend he always exaggerated. Boyan Archipelago turns him into a survivalist monster. Pop greens that reshape battlefields, sniping that borders on precognition, and a calm under pressure that would have shocked his old self. When his training ends, his first heading is obvious. Elbaf. Among giants, his tales of Marineford, of Luffy, of war and devil fruit chaos sound almost tame at first. And then he proves them. Usopp shoots cannonballs out of the sky, brings down sea kings with trick shots, and soon enough, giant warriors ask to sail under his flag. The great Captain Usopp becomes real, leading a giant brigade whose long-range firepower turns naval battles into artillery nightmares. The others do not disappear into the background either. Chopper stays on Torino just long enough to turn local chaos into a medical revolution, then sails as a doctor hero, was dropping into plague zones and war fronts where even Marines fear to tread. Robin sinks deeper into the Revolutionary Army, no longer a drifting archaeologist, but a core strategist who reads poneglyph secrets and world government battle reports in the same breath. Frankie, armed with memories of Vegapunk's genius, rebuilds himself again, fusing futuristic weapons and cola power into a cyborg form that Marine briefings classify as high-priority threat, mobile battleship. Brook embraces the spotlight. As a soul-powered rock icon, he tours from kingdom to kingdom, slipping between pirate crews, singing on marine islands under false names, and gathering secrets in every port. Individually, none of them forget Luffy. Collectively, they stop needing him to move. Each Straw Hat specializes, embeds into factions, and becomes a force to be reckoned with in a different corner of the world. Their names start echoing across the seas like separate storms. As not a single pirate crew. And somewhere, in the middle of all those rising legends, a new question forms in every war room and pirate den alike. What happens if those 9 storms ever collide again? Training without a flag. Power growth in a disbanded era. Those 9 storms do not collide right away. Before that happens, the world has to survive something far stranger. 9 separate training arcs happening at once, without a flag to unite them. How would the seas change when every ex-Straw Hat starts chasing power with no promise of coming home? Zoro is the clearest example. In canon, his training with Mihawk had a quiet deadline: return to Luffy, regroup, sail again. Here, there is no deadline, no captain waiting at Sabaody. That absence becomes fuel. Mihawk stops treating him as an apprentice and starts treating him as a future rival, throwing him into duels that split castles, enforcing observation haki in blindfolded battles and grinding armament haki until his blades permanently drink black. But what if that loneliness also awakens something else? With no crew to protect, Zoro's killing intent runs wild, and Conqueror's haki flickers early, knocking out whole ports as he roams like a demon swordsman whose fights literally reshape islands. Nami walks a different path, but the power spike is just as terrifying. Witheria was already a paradise of sky science, and yet in a world where the Straw Hats disband, she does not rush back to any crew. She stays. She patents new Climatak designs with the old scientists, then links their tech to black market weather guilds and the shattered remnants of Big Mom's intel network. Soon enough, Nami has real-time sea and sky data from every blue. In battle, she stops being a support navigator and becomes a tactical weather weapon, calling down hyper-local typhoons, slicing fronts, or Zeus-level lightning on command. These entire marine fleets report natural disasters that only ever appear when she does. Sanji's growth is a war between pride and necessity. Kamabaka's Nukama Kenpo still breaks his body down and rebuilds it, sharpening his haki and stamina, but without a crew waiting, he keeps going past his old limits, past the point where pain even registers. Then Germa appears. In the canon timeline, he resists their science. Here, and the loneliness and the need to protect Luffy's dream from afar finally push him to wear the raid suits, even if he hates the name on the box. Raid tech fuses with his Diable Jambe, turning him into a ghost-like assassin chef who can cross an entire blue overnight and end a fight before the enemy even registers the heat. Usopp's path looks almost comedic from a distance. Then the body count starts. Boyne's plants give him living ammunition and trick flora. Elbaf's warriors give him scale and discipline. Constant life-or-death hunts in monster-filled forests force his observation haki to bloom until he can read killing intent across a battlefield. Soon he is not just a sniper hiding behind rocks. He is a battlefield commander calling artillery lines of carnivorous seeds, vine traps, and giant allies, turning whole islands into living fortresses. The rest of the former crew does not lag behind. Chopper, without a captain to lean on, throws himself into medicine until his intuition is practically medical haki, reading internal damage and virus patterns mid-fight. Monster Point stops being a last resort and becomes a controlled, time-extended form that can wrestle ancient beasts and pacifistas alike. Robin, tied deeply to the Revolutionary Army, learns to combine her espionage with silent elimination, sprouting hands on throats, hearts, and trigger fingers, turning whole meetings into one-sided executions. Frankie, cut loose in the age of Vegapunk and pacifistas, reverse engineers every weapon he can find. His body upgrades again and again until he is walking artillery, with beams on par with pacifista lasers and modular frames for sea, land, and air combat. Brook pushes his soul-based devil fruit to eerie extremes, slipping into haki users' bodies to disrupt their flow, slicing the rhythm of other devil fruits, and freezing battlefields with deathly chills that ignore armor. And by the time rumors of their separate legends start overlapping, the world government realizes something terrifying. The Straw Hats did not vanish. They fragmented into 9 separate endgame threats, each a force to be reckoned with, each demanding its own strategy, its own countermeasure. And somewhere, in those same war rooms that once planned for Marineford, a new kind of panic grows. What happens if these 9 monsters ever decide that disbanding was a mistake? The world reacts. Marines, Yonko, and a broken Straw Hat legacy. Those war rooms that once planned Marineford now redraw their maps. 1 Yonko flag gone, 1 Straw Hat Jolly Roger erased. But what if, instead of relief, the world had just inherited 9 separate disasters, wearing the same legacy on their backs? From the Marines' perspective, the seas had become an absolute mess. The Straw Hat Pirates category is quietly deleted, and replaced by something far more unnerving. The Straw Hat List. 9 S-class targets, 9 different oceans of risk. Luffy is tagged as a roaming calamity, a man whose Gear 5 power and haki can ignite a war anywhere he lands. Zoro is assigned to a specialized swordsman unit, a division built around men trained to counter flying slashes and Conqueror's-infused duels, many of them modeled after Mihawk's own fighting style. Sanji becomes a nightmare for intelligence officers. His Germa bloodline, his skywalking mobility, and his connection to East Blue make him a perfect wild card, so the Navy forms hybrid task forces with Cypher Paul assassins and science officers to track him. Frankie draws the attention of the Marine Science Division. Pacifista engineers and Vegapunk's old protégés are quietly ordered to develop counters to his evolving cyborg body, and Robin, as always, is placed under Cypher Paul's personal jurisdiction. How would the government react to a single woman who can read the poneglyphs, now moving without Luffy's protection, but with Marineford-era confidence and stronger haki? They move agents like chess pieces just to cage her shadow. The Yonko feel the shift too. Big Mom's soul-driven empire immediately flags Nami. A navigator who can weaponize the climate, who already survived Whole Cake Island in the original timeline, is a direct path to weather control over entire shipping lanes. Kaido's scouts quietly follow rumors of a green-haired swordsman cutting through warlords and supernovas, seeing Zoro as the perfect addition to his army of monsters. Blackbeard, always hunting forbidden power, hears that Nico Robin is alone again and starts wondering how fast he can chain her to his poneglyph collection. Even the remnants of the warlord system react. Mihawk watches Zoro's solo legend spread and treats him as both future rival and temporary deterrent against other swordsmen. Ispo Hancock hears that Luffy disbanded the crew and sees every ex-Straw Hat as a potential bargaining chip in whatever war is coming next. Far away, the Revolutionary Army studies the same chaos. Dragon and Sabo immediately move to shield Robin, understanding that her knowledge is now a free-floating nuke in a world already primed for rebellion. Luffy's decision to end the crew is reinterpreted as a tragic act of resistance. A captain sacrificing his own dream formation so his friends can survive long enough to change the system from different angles. Soon enough, ex-Straw Hats become catalysts in uprisings. Nami advising oppressed islands on sea routes, Usopp inspiring Elbaf warriors, Chopper turning battlefields into hospitals that refuse marine orders. In the underworld, the Straw Hat name mutates. It is no longer a single flag, it is a rumor attached to hotspots. Brokers fight over Sanji's Germa connections, and Brook's celebrity concerts that can sway entire nations, and Nami's navigation guilds that can redirect entire trade currents. Morgan's papers turn each ex-member into a headline, feeding the idea that this broken crew is still a force to be reckoned with, just wearing different colors. The world government finally breathes, thinking the unified Straw Hats are gone. Then whispers start. A storm pattern Nami is following, a swordsman's ship changing course, a skeleton musician canceling shows. All 9 trajectories, by chance or fate, bending toward the same horizon again. And somewhere, the question returns. What happens if the 9 storms decide to collide? The new trigger. What crisis forces a Straw Hat reunion? Those 9 storms don't just drift, they're pulled. And at the center of that pull is a single, brutal announcement from Mariajois. The world government had become an absolute mess, trying to track 9 separate legends. Nice, so the solution is simple and cruel. Don't hunt the Straw Hats. Hang their meaning. On the same execution platform where Gold D. Roger died, the cameras flicker on and the world hears the sentence. Not Ace this time, not a commander, it's Monkey D. Dragon. But what if the target isn't Dragon alone? The broadcast shows him in chains, and beside him, another figure, Sabo, battered, his pipe snapped, declared an accomplice in the Straw Hat ideology incident. Every rebellion, every flag raised in Luffy's name, is pinned on them. The message is clear. Luffy's family, his ideals, his very dream have been dragged onto a Marineford 2.0 stage. Luffy disbanded the crew to protect them. Distance was supposed to be armor. No shared ship meant no shared target. But this sentence means the opposite. Every revolution inspired by his rampage at Marineford, every kingdom that whispered about his haki and devil fruit, has become justification for this public execution. And staying apart no longer keeps anyone safe. In fact, it proves the government right. The idea of Straw Hats without a ship is even more dangerous. Information doesn't travel in one straight line. It explodes outward. Robin hears first, buried in a revolutionary operation, when a coded report about the Dragon's final flight hits her desk. Nami catches it in the sky itself as weather transponder snails relay a sudden global broadcast to Yonko fleets. Sanji hears it in an underworld kitchen, on knives frozen mid-slice as cooks whisper about a special banquet being prepared for an execution. Zoro sees Dragon's face nailed to a bounty board in some remote island, where Mihawk's training had just left another crater. On Elbaf, Usopp listens as giant warriors roar about a coming war that will shake the son of Dragon from hiding. Brook hears it backstage, a promoter breathlessly announcing that the biggest live show in history will be the death of the world's most wanted man. Soon enough, and every ex-Straw Hat realizes the same thing. This isn't random justice, this is bait, and their loyalties fracture under the weight of that bait. Zoro has a promise to Mihawk, a swordsman's path that demands total focus. Robin's mission with the revolutionaries is on the brink of exposing an ancient weapon. Sanji is once again entangled with Germa and Big Mom's fractured remnants, bound by debts and blood. Nami sails under a Yonko's protection, her chart's the backbone of an emperor's power. How would the strongest navigator in the New World explain abandoning that shelter? How would the world's greatest swordsman in training justify walking away from his master? Every path they've chosen screams, "Stay." The ghost of the Straw Hat flag whispers, "Go." The day of the execution dawns. In different seas, under different skies, 9 separate ships adjust their course. A black hawk-headed flag, a revolutionary tattersail, a Germa snail ship, a musician's tour vessel, a lone coffin boat, on each one a force to be reckoned with, each bearing a different symbol, all turning their bows toward the same execution platform. No Straw Hat crew, just Straw Hat legends converging on a new Marineford. And somewhere above that blood-soaked harbor, an empty space in the sky seems to wait for the first punch. Who throws it first? Marineford Reborn, when ex-Straw Hats crash the war. The answer comes from the sky. Over the new Marineford, the heavens bruise black in seconds, and as if the world itself remembers the last war. Clouds twist into unnatural spirals, thunderheads stacked like islands in the sky, and the sun disappears behind a curtain of storm. Below, the sea does not stay calm. It boils. Currents slam against each other. Whirlpools bloom and die, and even the sea kings lurking in the deep hesitate. This is not just an execution. This is a warning to the whole era. On the plaza, 3 admirals sit beneath the scaffold, cloaked in quiet hockey pressure. As vice admirals line the steps like blades in a rack. Pacifistas stand in perfect formation, eyes dead, palms glowing. New generation warlords lounge on the edges, bored smiles hiding sharp intent. At the center, the condemned figure kneels, chains of sea stone glinting. The world holds its breath. Then the first flag appears, not the Straw Hat. A black-hilted sword on white. Zoro's ship doesn't slip through the blockade. It carves through it. A single slash of blackened blades. And a marine warship splits cleanly in half. Decks, cannons, and all. Another swing, and a line of ships behind it shear apart like paper. Each stroke drips with years of training, with hockey so dense it stains the air. How would the Marines explain a swordsman who cuts fleets instead of ships? Soon enough, cannon fire turns into floating scrap. But the sea itself rebels next. A corridor of impossible calm opens through the chaos, a glassy path leading straight toward the island. On either side, giant walls of lightning roar down in vertical sheets, frying stray cannonballs and vaporizing marine sloops that drift too close. Nami's weather mages ride the wind, amplifying her tech, their rods crackling as she bends the storm front like a puppeteer. Marineford's own sky has become her battlefield. Before anyone can process that, the plaza erupts. Explosions bloom with surgical precision around command towers, Den Mushi nests, and pacifista clusters. No ship in sight, yet just shells raining in from beyond the horizon. Usopp's new long-range batteries, Elbaf forged and hockey guided, pound the heart of Marineford from a distance no ordinary sniper could even see. Panic spreads as officers fall to seeds that sprout shackling vines, smoke bullets, and trick plants that explode into flash-freezing sap. Then the air catches fire. Sanji streaks down from above, Sky walking through the smoke, raid suit vents glowing. Each kick is a comet. On Diable Jambe, variations ignite cannon lines, melt gun batteries, and send vice admirals skidding through shattered stone. Between strikes, he redirects falling rubble with casual heel taps, saving civilians the Marines had written off as collateral. On the ground, a different monster charges. Chopper's controlled Monster Point towers over Pacifistas, fur bristling with armament hockey, eyes completely clear. One cyborg is used as a club to batter 3 more. Yes, another is torn apart with clinical precision as Chopper calls out medical terms, searching for core weaknesses in their design. Even in the rampage, his massive hands scoop up wounded bystanders and toss them gently toward safe zones. The battlefield had become an absolute mess. Across the chaos, hands bloom from nowhere, Robin's arms sprout from Marine rifles, from cannon wheels, from the backs of high-ranking officers. Joints snap, weapons twist away. Ice and key strategists are pinned to the ground with a forest of limbs. Around her, revolutionaries surge forward, guarded by invisible walls of clutching fingers. Frankie answers the buster call with one of his own. A towering battlesuit, half sunny, half Vegapunk nightmare, stomps into range. Shoulder ports open, and beams scream across the bay, slicing through fortress walls and pacifistas alike. Deployable shields unfold to block Admiral-grade blasts, while smaller cyborgs fan out, intercepting Marine artillery. Music cuts through the roar. Brook glides over the battlefield, body flickering between bone and soul. Bullets pass through him as if through mist, his cane sword tracing arcs of freezing wind. With a single chord, entire units slow, their breath turning to frost as the chill of the underworld seeps into their bones. One song, and a whole flank collapses in icy silence, yet no single banner unites them. Giants bearing Elbaf crests fight alongside Usopp's emblem. Revolutionaries rally around Robin. Germa soldiers flank Sanji in tense, unspoken alliance. Weather mages guard Nami's ship. Rock fans in tattered tour shirts chant Brook's name. Each ex-Straw Hat stands at the center of a different storm, a force to be reckoned with in a war that no longer has clear sides. Then the pattern breaks. A shockwave tears the sky open. From above the execution platform, a figure drops, hockey flaring like a second sun. Older, scarred, grinning. Luffy doesn't raise a flag. He doesn't shout orders. He just hits the plaza so hard the stone buckles, dust exploding outward, and starts running straight for the execution stand. No command. No follow me. Just trust that in this chaos, every former Straw Hat will decide for themselves who they fight for, and who they save. If Marineford had 9 wildcards, rewriting the war's outcome. For a heartbeat, Marineford looks the same as in canon. Luffy sprinting, Marines screaming, towards the execution platform looming over everything like a guillotine. But what if this time, the dash to Ace is not a solo suicide run, but the opening move of 9 separate legends crashing into the same battlefield? In the original war, Luffy's path to the stand meant clawing through waves of Marines, pacifistas, and even Mihawk, barely surviving long enough to reach his brother. Here, that path had become an absolute mess for the Marines instead. Zoro tears forward, blades drawn, as locking an admiral-level swordsman in a clash that splits the plaza, Steel and Haki shrieking. Sanji rockets through the air, intercepting Kizaru's light kicks with burning Diable Jambe, forcing the light itself to divert. Far behind the front line, Usopp plants himself on broken ramparts, Haki-boosted sniping, taking out executioners and cannon crews from beyond visual range. The result is not a desperate tunnel toward Ace, but coordinated chaos. Every step Luffy takes is through openings carved by comrades who are no longer subordinates, but a force to be reckoned with in their own right. How would the Marines even prioritize targets when each Straw Hat alone has war-changing power? Then comes the execution moment. In canon, Sengoku and Garp alone stood over Ace. Now, the world government learns from that failure. Multiple admirals ring the platform. Cypher Paul elites, masked and merciless, reinforce them. Haki trained specifically to counter devil fruit tricks. The stand becomes a fortress, but the ex-Straw Hats answer with their own precision. Robin Bloom's giant arms along the scaffold's underside, fingers silently twisting sea stone chains and shackles. Brooke's soul form slips through guards, freezing joints and cutting bindings in ways no Logia can block. Above, storm fronts and mirrored panels appear as Nami bends the weather, blinding snipers and splitting the sky. And Frankie turns rubble into cover and artillery, redirecting marine cannons, boxing admirals into narrow kill zones where their range means less. Akainu, in cannon, could focus. He hunted Ace. He baited Luffy. That focus led to a single fatal punch. Here, the magma giant walks into a gauntlet. Zoro's cursed blades clash against molten fists, blackened with advanced haki. Sanji's flaming kicks hammer Akainu's guard, refusing to let him plant his feet. Chopper, in monstrous form, grapples magma hounds and slams them aside, his enhanced haki and medicine barely keeping his body together. Frankie fires laser cannons, forcing Akainu to constantly harden and reposition. Meanwhile, Usopp's smokes and trick shots and Nami's thunderheads constantly warp visibility and terrain. Akainu can still kill. But can he isolate anyone close to Luffy long enough to land that one irreversible blow? With this much backup, Ace or Sabo on that stand has a far higher chance of surviving. And Whitebeard's heart might still fail, his age and wounds catching up. But his final stand changes. Maybe he dies later, trading his life to cover a Straw Hat ally's retreat. Maybe an ally like Jinbe, or even a former warlord, falls instead, stepping into a blow meant for Luffy. The political fallout is enormous. This is no longer just Whitebeard versus the world government. It is a war where ex-Straw Hats, each acting as an independent power, openly defy Marineford's authority. The balance of the three great powers shatters sooner. Admirals push for even harsher justice. New Yonko positions open faster as Luffy, Zoro, and even Nami-backed cartels rise. Revolutionary strongholds swell with recruits inspired by this spectacle. Yet even if more people walk away alive, the emotional cost cuts deeper. They fought side by side again, trusted each other in the fire. But there is no shared ship waiting after the war. Now, what does it do to Luffy to save Ace with the help of a crew that is no longer his? And how long can 9 separate legends keep pretending this reunion was only temporary? Stronger apart or together? The emotional price of disbanding Luffy got what he said he wanted. A world where the Straw Hats could stand on their own. No more crying over helplessness at Marineford. No more watching friends almost die because they were dragged into his storm. But what if the very war that proved their power also exposed the emotional crater his decision left behind? For Luffy, this battlefield is a mirror. The training, the haki, the Devil Fruit Awakening, all of it meant that each former Straw Hat arrived as a force to be reckoned with. The admirals fell back, the Marines broke. Ace lived through a war that had become an absolute mess. On paper, Luffy's choice looks justified. Yet every time he glances sideways and sees no shared Jolly Roger, just 9 lone legends converging for one desperate fight, the victory tastes thinner. How would the story of the Pirate King feel without the laughter on the Sunny's deck? Zoro and Sanji show the sharpest edge of that trade-off. As solo warriors, they are monsters. Zoro, honed under Mihawk without interruption, cuts through vice admirals like they are training dummies. Sanji, forged between Germa's science and his own hellish kitchens, dances through the sky against Kizaru. But their rivalry survived, but it cooled. It became about rankings, headlines, bounties, professional, efficient, empty. Fighting beside Luffy again, insults slip out mid-fight, timing sinks without a word, and for a moment the old rhythm comes roaring back. Then the thought hits. Luffy released them. No argument, no vote. That sting does not vanish just because the teamwork still works. Nami, Usopp, and Chopper stand on another axis of this choice. Nami is now the premier navigator of entire fleets, charting currents the world thought impossible. Usopp, the brave warrior of the sea, is finally a global sniper icon, training Elbaf's next generation. Chopper leads medical breakthroughs that change islands. They are no longer a weak trio. Yet in the war's worst moments, each one feels the old pattern. Courage blooming because Luffy is charging first, because the Straw Hats are at their back. And their individual victories between islands were impressive, but walking off a world-saving negotiation or a cured pandemic without the Sunny to come home to always felt off, like winning a fight in an empty arena. Robin, Frankie, and Brook face a different dilemma. Robin's work with the revolutionaries, Frankie's ties to global tech factions, Brook's fame across seas have made them leaders, not followers. They finally found large-scale purpose. Yet the reunion drags up something smaller and more intimate. The way the Straw Hats accepted a demon child, a cyborg, and a living skeleton as family without conditions. After commanding armies and audiences, can they really go back to being just crewmates under one flag, answering to Luffy's whims and hunger? Soon enough, the war quiets. Smoke drifts. Whether the condemned is saved or lost, Marineford's ruins hold 9 silhouettes standing together, not as the Straw Hat Pirates, but as 9 separate storms. Luffy's hat hangs low. Was disbanding them a tragic necessity to keep them alive, or the biggest mistake of his life? The wind tugs at tattered sails. Someone's hand brushes the old flag. For a heartbeat, the world holds its breath. Do they raise the Straw Hat again, or turn away in 9 different directions, leaving the answer for another day? So, should Luffy ever disband the Straw Hats? In that frozen heartbeat, as the answer says everything about Luffy, and about what leadership really costs. This timeline began with a single, brutal choice. After Marineford, drowning in guilt, Luffy disbanded the Straw Hats. No Sabaody reunion, no shared ship. Just 9 legends thrown back into the world alone. That decision meant the seas no longer had one terrifying Jolly Roger to fear. Instead, there were 9 separate storms, each a force to be reckoned with. So Zoro vanished into Mihawk's shadow and carved his way toward the title of strongest swordsman without a captain to anchor him. Nami turned the New World's skies into her personal laboratory, trading routes with Yonko and navigation guilds until her weather control rivaled natural disasters. Sanji walked the razor's edge between Germa and Baratie, sharpening both his kicks and his loyalties. Usopp reached Elbaf and trained until his lies about heroism started sounding like news reports. Robin sank deeper into the revolutionary army. Frankie weaponized whole shipyards, Chopper became a black market miracle, Brook haunted emperor's courts, and Jinbe moved like a quiet admiral of the seas. The world adapted. Bounties spiked on 9 different posters. Marines had become an absolute mess trying to track overlapping incidents that all traced back to ex-Straw Hats. Yonko and warlords either tried to recruit them or avoid them. How would the balance of power hold when every ocean had its own Straw Hat-level threat roaming free? Soon enough, the answer came at a new Marineford-style war. Not as one crew charging together, but as 9 independent legends crashing in from different horizons with their own flags, allies, and agendas. The battlefield turned into proof that Luffy's choice worked, in one sense. Separating them multiplied their influence. The world shook harder, wider, faster. But what if that was also the real tragedy? Disbanding the Straw Hats protected them from dying at his side, yet it also killed the heart of their story. The shared voyage, the dumb arguments on deck, the quiet training, the laughter before a fight. Luffy tried to carry guilt alone, to make the strongest move by letting go. In this timeline, leadership meant isolation. Canon Luffy chooses something else. The real series argues that his strength is not keeping danger away from his friends, but trusting them to charge into war with him. His haki, his devil fruit, his power all matter. But the real engine behind Marineford, Wano, and everything beyond is the unbroken belief that the Straw Hats are stronger together. So the question lingers. Was ending the crew an act of ultimate protection, or a betrayal of what made them unbeatable? Which Straw Hat becomes the most dangerous solo force in this universe? Zoro, the wandering demon? Nami, the Stormbroker? Or someone completely unexpected? Would a full series set in this fractured world be worth watching, or does it feel like One Piece without its soul? And if disbanding happened at a different branch point, post-Wano, pre-time skip, even before Eni's lobby, would everything change even more? This disbanded Straw Hat universe does not have to stop here. Imagine a future what if, where Zoro accepts a warlord offer and turns Marineford into a three-way swordsman nightmare. Or a path where Nami becomes Big Mom's navigator and rewrites Whole Cake Island from the inside. There are countless flags that never flew, alliances that never formed, wars that never happened. So if this alternate timeline felt like a war of 9 storms instead of one ship, then the next scenarios can twist the seas even further. Comment the wildest branch point that comes to mind, the solo Straw Hat that terrifies the new world the most, and the alliances that would reshape everything. For anyone who wants more of these impossible journeys, more Marineford rewrites, more broken and rebuilt crews, hit subscribe and keep throwing out ideas. Because as long as new what-ifs keep sailing in, this disbanded Straw Hat world will never truly end. Just like the legend of the Pirate King who might have chosen a different path and paid a different price.